you're inspired by music, this is the place to be on Sunday morning, isn't it? If you're able, please stand and join me in call of worship. Welcome to the Custer Community Church. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here.
God revealed through Jesus welcomes us. We will extend that warm welcome to everyone here.
Everyone here has made mistakes in their life. Every single person needs forgiveness and encouragement.
God revealed through Jesus forgives us. We will extend that forgiveness to everyone here.
Everyone here is created in God's image. Every single person is a beloved child of God.
God revealed through Jesus loves us unconditionally. We will extend that love to everyone here.
You are welcomed, you are forgiven, and you are loved. Siblings in Christ, you are so safe here.
We are not safe in the midst of this sanctuary. We can let our guard down and bitterness ourselves. And then God's love can transform our hearts and minds. We are ready to worship. Come, Holy Spirit, come.
And the hymn is number 473, Blessed Assurance.
I'd ask that you join me in prayer as we get started this morning. God, we've come together today to learn once again a story that we've heard before, but am anxious to hear a new take. We ask that you open our hearts and tune into your presence in our life. Help us to be aware of the times that you are working in our lives and working around us so that we can open ourselves to the endless possibilities of what you have in store for us. I ask that you help us to look back on the good and the bad of the week previous and look on it with gratitude. Look on it with a sense of growth and understanding, or working towards that. We know that sometimes it can be really hard to look back on hard things with gratitude. Help us to understand their purpose. We ask for the blessings of new and wonderful things to come throughout our next week and our days apart. And I ask that you're with this congregation each and every day as they work to support the community of Custer and show the love and acceptance that each and every person is due and entitled to through your love. I ask this all in your name. Amen. chapter 14, verses 1, and then 7 through 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went out to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when the host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and all those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." This ends our reading. This week's gospel is a lot easier to digest. I'd like us to start with a time of thought before I jump into what I've been talking about. To set us in our mind, I'd like us all to be placed in a time where we felt the feeling of being watched. Whether for good or bad reasons, just try to get yourself into that mind space for a moment. I know that when I speak for myself, I'm a very large person. That is not a secret by any means. So I'm kind of used to being watched. I can't really go anywhere without that just presence, because you stand across the top of the aisles and I'm there. It's hard to miss me. There are other parts about me that have made being watched harder. I'm big. I like being big. I give really good hugs. But that's also been a reason that people have decided that I'm worth watching. I'm not the most masculine person you'll ever meet in the world. I enjoy having my hair coiffed or some other fun work like that. My nails done, looking nice. Those are all reasons that in the Midwest, you kind of get watched for different reasons. There's also times where being watched is a really good thing. When I was a teacher, the year that school kind of shut down with COVID, we had to make a bunch of videos for all of our students to be able to learn. And so I got watched a lot. I have a lot of streams on YouTube. They're from kindergartners, but still, you get watched. Being watched is something that is constant, and it's something that we're kind of born into. As soon as we come out and start living our life, we're in a state of being watched. There have been specific times, I think, in all of our lives, though, that the idea of having eyes on us has been more noticeable than others, because sometimes they're being given to us in a more malicious way. Someone looking for something that's specifically wrong with us. This time in Luke, as it starts off right away, it talks about Jesus being watched really closely. We all know why. But that idea of people just constantly veering in to watch for a misstep, watch for something to slip up, is something that is present in the later Gospels because people were trying to catch him. People were trying to catch him in a moment of weakness. And I got to thinking about what I do and what people do in general when we're being watched like that. I am one of the most critical voices in my own head. I spend a lot of time second guessing every single thing that I do. And it's one of those lovely things that just kind of comes with time and insecurity. But one of the things that I don't do very well is when I'm feeling that idea of being watched, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but when I'm feeling that way, I have a harder time speaking my mind about certain things. I have a harder time opening myself up to the vulnerabilities of what's coming in and what could be coming towards me. The question that I thought of when I was reading this gospel at first was, do we as people speak up when we're feeling that time of being watched, regardless of what we're speaking up against? Do we sit there and know full well that all eyes are on us, yet we still take the courage to say what's on our mind or to say what's going on? I like to say that I do. Sometimes I can, sometimes I don't, and sometimes I won't. It's a situation by situation. This idea, though, of taking the important seat, as Jesus called it in this parable, that's another idea of being watched. To me, that idea, it could be physical or literal, taking up the front row seat. Our family has sat in the front row of our church since I was like 3, started going there. I don't know why we chose the front, but now that I'm 26 and the tallest person in Pennington County, it feels like, that idea of being watched kind of goes there. But sometimes when we're being watched, and this idea of taking the important seat, it's kind of asking for eyes to be on us. It's asking for the attention that we might be seeking. One of the themes that came to mind when I was reading this week's gospel was the idea of a fishbowl. Does everyone understand that reference there? If you're in a fishbowl, you can see everything that's going on. The fish has no privacy. There's nothing that you can get away with. You're going to see it happen. Sometimes when we take that important seat, when we're being watched and we make a decision that puts us right at the front of being watched, we put ourselves into a fishbowl situation where we're not going to be able to hide any part of who we are. We just kind of have to own up to it. To go along with that, though, I think sometimes we place ourselves in a fishbowl of our own choosing. And so the question that I came up with along with that one was, what kind of places of honor do we put ourselves in? What table do we put ourselves at the head of so that we can feel the fishbowl effect? I truly don't know for myself. I don't work with a whole lot of people. I work with a lot of kids, but my job is not one where I'm constantly surrounded by a lot of adults. I come in and provide services for some of the churches in our conference, but that's not an attention-seeking thing. So I thought to myself, what are things in my life that I make the decision to turn it all on me? And to be honest, along with not really having an answer, the only ones that I was able to come up with were negative. Ones where I kind of already was in a place of being insecure or being in a place of frustration or anxiety. And those are the times that I tend to get myself to get the eyes to turn towards me. Part of me thinks that that's God's way of trying to be like, okay, if you're feeling this way, I'm going to give some other people the chance to reassure you. To give you some assurance that you're a good person, that you're a kind person, all these things that you might be doubting. One of the things that comes along with this idea of being placed in a place of honor or a place of being watched as ourselves is this idea of being humble. Jesus goes on in the end of this gospel talking about those who exalt themselves will be humbled and those who are exalted will be, or no, other way around. The ones who are exalted will be humbled, the ones who are humble will be exalted. The idea of being humbled is truly a blessing. Because the idea of being humbled is someone being able to take you from a place and ground you a little bit. Sometimes we can get really lofty ideas and really intense things that just kind of course through our body. And it takes another person to kind of bring us back to ground zero, to bring us to a place of understanding. So although there can be embarrassment attached to it, especially for myself particularly, there's a blessing in that. There's a blessing in someone taking the time to bring you down and help you see things from a different perspective. This idea of being humbled is something that sometimes we don't need, but sometimes we really do need it. Sometimes being humbled is something that needs to happen so that we can understand and appreciate the circumstances around the situations that we're in. We don't know everything. And being reminded that we don't know everything and that we need to take some time is an okay thing to experience. To go along with that idea of not knowing everything is the statement, we don't need to know everything. You can tell that that was an important thought in my sermon because I have it all underlined and ... It's true though. This idea of having a general understanding of everything the way that you wish it would be, the way you think it should be, and just kind of sticking with it isn't necessarily always the best option for us as people, especially in my own personal life. My mom and I kind of can go around a little bit sometimes. I'm really close with my parents and my sister. My nuclear family is everything to me. And no one humbles me quite like my mom. She can come into a situation that I'm in and just really sock it to me pretty much. Bring me back to a place of knowing that I'm loved and understood and that my feelings are valid, but she allows me to be able to look at things as a whole picture and realize that my perception of something isn't what I had thought. I didn't know everything, and I don't need to know everything. I need to be present. That idea of wanting to know things, though, this idea of bringing ourselves to a higher place, sometimes I tie that thought process to the saying, the higher the hair, the higher the God, Dolly Parton type thing. Sometimes it can feel that when we try to have everything in our lives figured out, we're trying to get ourselves to a higher place, a place of being closer to God. But in reality, God will do that for us. God will bring us to where we need to be on our own. We don't need to have that. We don't need to have the omnipotent understanding of our life or of the situations going on around us. All of this to say, this ending part of this gospel this morning, talking about who we bring to our banquets in life. Not just the time where we've got after church snacks that are just delicious, but the other parts of our life where we're bringing joy and understanding and patience and those very vital pieces of humanity to each other. It's important that we give that to everyone around us, not just the people that we feel worthy or the ones that will come back and repay us in the future, or we'll talk about it for time to come. We have opportunities to serve others, and we should. We should take those opportunities and serve them as an opportunity to keep ourselves humble, to bring those who are in need closer to something that they're needing. This entire gospel, to me, is saying two things, and it's a not for me and it's a not for us. It's a we. Jesus is saying here that there's this chance that we have when we come together, not only to keep yourself humble and allow others to exalt you the way that they should, but if you're the host, if you're the one that's bringing these feelings of being exalted to others, it doesn't need to be for everyone that you think it should be. Sometimes it can be for Joe Schmo walking down the street, and that's okay. One of the things that I was talking about this morning when I got here was talking about this idea of places where we allow ourselves to be humble. And I hadn't planned this part of the sermon, but it kind of brings this, talking about it this morning brings it to light. My first sermon that I was up here, I talked about that my pastor Bruce had passed away. We're now 4 months past, I believe, And life has continued on, and life has, thrown its curveballs that it was going to throw regardless. But one of the things that comes to mind right now is the idea of what happened right when Bruce passed away, and the way that I needed to humble myself in my life in order for others to be kept together. When Bruce passed away, I was at work after getting done with the training. I was in my hallway, one of my foster parents, my mom called. And she gave me the news, and of course I cried and fell apart a little bit, but my sister and I had the same knee-jerk reaction. We went to church. We both went to church. This is a church that our pastor had served in for 40 years, or 37, but 40 years of ordination. And we went to church so that we could be there, so that other people could come to us and fall apart. We were the people that people were coming to at the church. We were the ones calling. We called people from around the nation that Bruce had the impact on in their lives, letting them know that he had passed. We did all these things because we took it as an opportunity to allow others to fall apart in a way that we weren't able to yet, and in a safe place where they were able to do it without the fear of being judged or the fear of being alone. To me, that was a large piece of me humbling myself, because when I'm grieving, I can be pretty selfish. I think most people can. When I'm grieving, it's kind of an all about me story, and it's something that I don't like about myself, but it's a true statement. But when we take time to humble ourselves, and when we take time to let others sit at that higher place so that we can attend to them the way that they're needing to, it allows us to grow a deeper connection with them than we could have imagined just being present with them. The last thing I want to say with this morning, one thing that I think about when I think about Jesus and his humble nature is that the idea of being humble is something that Jesus, he never expressed anything except for the idea of being humble. In every action that he did, in every word he spoke to people, he was exuding humble. He was exuding humility. Jesus didn't do anything because he was trying to push a personal agenda. He wasn't doing anything because he was trying to sit at the front of the table or be the one that's exalted or anything like that. He was doing things because he wanted people to love. He wanted people to understand love. We can be pretty lucky in life if we live in the same and follow the same idea, that we work towards bringing love and understanding and patience to those around us. Because that's truly the type of message that Jesus is bringing to us from God, and God is bringing to us through Jesus. Allowing ourselves to be humble and to be open to the opportunities that lie before us, and allowing others to sit closer to the head of the table allows us a different view, a different perspective, but one that we can enjoy regardless of where we are. Amen. Please pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for gorgeous weather and the birds that sing outside as we walk into these doors, and for the warm air that fills our sanctuary as we all come together to listen. I ask, God, that you keep us humble and you help us feel an air of humility in all of who we are, so that we can always be working towards bringing others to you, to salvation, to a place of being loved. We know that we're loved. Sometimes we need a reminder, but we know we're loved by you. You give us the opportunity, though, to bring that feeling to others, and we thank you for that. Help us and guide us and keep us safe. Bring us happiness and joy, and bring happiness and joy to those around us. All of this we ask in the name of your Son, who taught us to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Please stand if you're able, and join us in singing hymn 423, Great is Your Faithfulness. fount of every blessing, receive these gifts in the joy in which you bring them. May they bless your church universally, our community, and our world. May none suffer lack, and may we always give from generous hearts. May we always take joy in being blessed and to give, and to share with you and each other. Amen. Please join in our closing hymn, number 438, One Piece. I don't know if a lot of you have heard the story of It Is All of My Soul, but what the author of the song had come across to America. And his family, his wife and 2 daughters were on a ship sailing over that sank. And so he lost them at sea, and to get through his grief, he wrote that song. And the reason it's such a powerful song for me is because it actually kind of reminds me of being humble and having humility, allowing yourself to let God take over and take control of the hard things going on in your life. I love that song, and you guys sing it beautifully. So thank you for that. Please hear the condition. Transforming God, too often we have been afraid to speak out against the injustices of this world. We have worshipped